It's Friday, September 1st, let's talk PlayStation. Alright, so there's certainly a few news stories we can talk about that happened this past week. Certainly some things we can gloss over, and we'll get into that right now. So we'll start with our first news story. If you didn't see this already, this is awesome. Secret of Mana is getting a remake on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita, and that's exactly why I wanted to talk about this one, because is actually going to be on Vita, which is great. If you didn't see it already, it looks really cool. So it's going to be a total remake. It's going to be 3D, going to have voice talent in the game, multiplayer support, which is pretty cool. It'll be interesting to see how that works, but it looks great. And like I said, it's on Vita. What's great is that not only is Vita still getting releases, but a game, assuming this turns out to be good, this is like RPGs are so at home on Vita. They're like so great. So I'm actually very excited for this. You can expect this nice remake to come out February 15th. Again, PS4 and Vita. We'll go into our next news story. Now, if you remember, the past few weeks, months, we've been talking about the conferences that Sony's going to be having this year. Now they've announced their next one, or just another one for this year. Now, if you know right now, October 30th, that's going to be Paris Games Week press conference, and then come December 9th, 10th, that's going to be around PSX. It's going to be a PlayStation Experience conference. Now we have the pre-TGS Tokyo Game Show conference. Now that's going to be September 19th. So mark your calendars. That's actually going to be the first one, despite the fact that the other two conferences were announced earlier. So 19th. Now TGS, typically you can expect something out of Sony Studio Japan or obviously heavily focused Japanese-centric games. So if you're at all into JRPGs or any sort of Japanese developers, you should keep your eyes peeled for there. Now TGS in recent years hasn't been a huge show, but certainly it's some cool announcements still come out of there. It seems like TGS is always a great place to hear either Vita stuff or Vita hardware-related announcements, which are rare nowadays. So maybe we'll see something like that, although I wouldn't necessarily hold your breath out for like a hardware-related announcement for Vita, because like what else are they going to do? They're certainly not putting R&D into like releasing a new version of the system or anything like that. But yes, TGS September 19th, and it's going to be like in the middle of the night for most time zones, so that'll be kind of a bummer. But in the morning you'll wake up to some cool stuff. Now we have a number of things to talk about regarding PlayStation VR. So this past week Sony announced PlayStation VR is getting an official MSRP price cut and a new bundle. So the core bundle, which was about $400, and it included just the headset, right? And that's it. You still needed a PlayStation camera on your own. That's still $400, but now they are including the camera in that at no charge, and that's just the official core bundle moving forward. If you get into PSVR at the lowest price point, you're actually going to be getting the camera for $400. And then the PlayStation VR Worlds bundle, which will come with the camera, 2 Move controllers, and a copy of PlayStation VR Worlds, that's going down from $500 to $449. So that's pretty awesome, and that's an official cut. It should stay that price moving forward. So that's good. I mean, now see, initially when PlayStation VR dropped, right, actually did very well. Sony, it blew their expectations because clearly it didn't manufacture enough of them, so it was actually very hard to find them in stock. And now, typically in my experience, and I would assume this is the case for many people and all around the United States and North America, it's not too hard to find it in stock now. And I don't think that's a huge concern for Sony, but certainly now that they can comfortably, ship units out to retailers, I'm sure they want to keep that sort of momentum flowing. And that goes nicely into our next news story, which is Sony's Assad Kizilbash. God, his that name's a mouthful. I always mess it up every time I say it. He was talking at the GameStop Expo recently, sort of referring to what they want to do moving forward with PlayStation VR, and he basically said that right now their approach is games, to focus on releasing quality games for the platform. The quote he shared regarding PSVR was, "We are super focused on it. We're doubling down even this holiday. Where we are right now, we've sold everything we had on the shelf. We sold over 1 million of these things. The focus now is, let's get some really good games out there. More games out. There's over 100 games out there already. There's 100 in development, but we're also starting to get some of our big brands out there. Gran Turismo, that's going to have a VR component. We've got Skyrim in VR as well, so we're getting some of these big guns coming out there. we've also got some of our own new IP. Supermassive are doing some cool VR games as well. So for those of you that are keeping score, yes, PlayStation VR for a few months now has been well over 1 million units. If we're talking premium VR headsets, including Oculus and HTC Vive, PlayStation VR is the front runner right now. It has the most units out there. There are a lot of games on the PlayStation Store, and we are actually seeing finally some real, heavy implementation of it. Not necessarily these smaller titles, these low-budget titles, and let's face it, there are a lot of them when it comes to VR, especially on PC, where there's like a lot of free downloads you can mess with and stuff. But on the PlayStation Store, you will even find a lot of smaller, low-budget stuff. That's going to be the case. VR is very experimental, so you're going to see a lot of that stuff, but we are seeing more finalized projects, more heavy enriched projects. The big one as of recent, the one that's really, I think, sort of shows the potential for VR, and especially the fact that it can, you can ship full retail games with it, was Resident Evil 7. And it worked out even more beneficial for them because it was, you could play the game without VR. But that game totally worked from start to finish in VR, and it was an amazing experience, and it's quite honestly the best way to play that game. So you have that going for it, but now we also have Gran Turismo coming out, which that remains to be seen about its VR mode, and I know that's a little bit limited there. And actually, Skyrim, early impressions so far are not very good for it, which is a little concerning. I would hope Bethesda will sort that out or make it a little bit better, but now that's not looking so good. But no, Supermassive's games actually also look very good. Supermassive has 2 games coming out, I believe before the end of, I believe in November and October, which is their Team Bravo game, and Impatient, which is sort of the prequel to Until Dawn. Those actually look really good, and there's still a number of titles that came out too. It's all about software at this point. I mean, the number of units are out there. Consumer interest is there for sure, I think. But it's still sort of it's still a proving ground. Sony still needs to prove to the consumers that this is a viable piece of hardware. And I'm sure they understand that for the long term, because at the end of the day, I think the most ideal situation is the next generation of PlayStation VR, possibly on Sony's next hardware. You would assume that's going to be the case, right? I think that's going to be the most ideal factor for people that decide to skip VR during this generation, and that's fine. This would be sort of that stepping stone to the best part of it. Moving on to our next news story, but staying somewhat relevant, this is again from Asad Kizilbash from the GameStop 2017 Expo, giving us some more insight on the upcoming God of War, which is great. We're actually getting a lot more details about God of War as time goes on. It's usually Cory Barlog feeding this info to us. But anyway, Asad kind of gave us some insight about the whole game, right, and how it's going to play and how it's going to feel. I mean, now when you look at the initial trailer, you can obviously tell it's like totally different, right? And then we see more clips from it, and we're getting a greater idea of what it's going to be and how it's going to play. He actually made it more akin to like how in previous God of Wars you're always fighting against multiple enemies, but whereas in this one it's going to feel more like one-on-one, one-on-two. You're not going to have that situation of multiple NPCs. He said the game's going to feel a lot more brutal in this aspect, where it's constantly sort of an up-close and personal battle. And you can already see that in the gameplay. I totally get that. And that's cool, actually. It kind of reminds me of, like, the Killzone games, where the character, if you've played Killzone, you know that game sometimes has a very weighted feel to it, right? And when you're shooting the enemies, the bullets have such a profound impact on the enemy, and it really, it just feels like a heavy game, almost like... Some people don't like that, but some people also think it feels a lot more authentic, and I think that's kind of what sounds to me is what he's sort of describing. Because you're going to be doing, one-on-one, one-on-two, or not nearly as many enemies. Enemies always seemed like such a throwaway thing. They almost seemed powerless in the God of War games. Whereas now I feel like there's going to be a lot more heaviness to the game, and it's going to be more impactful for every slash you do and every an encounter. If what he's saying is how I'm interpreting it, I'm all for it, because we already know this game is going to be drastically different from the previous one, so I'm ready. This next one is heavy rumor based, so take it for what it is. This is from a Twitter account called @Bully2Info. So in relation to that, real quick, I will mention that the heavy rumor mill is saying that Bully 2 is in development, and it's likely going to be the next project out of Rockstar after they do Red Dead Redemption 2. But anyway, the PlayStation spin to this is that that Twitter account tweeted what appears to be concept imagery of Agent. Now, if you do not remember, Agent was announced in 2009 on Sony's E3 press conference stage, and this was promised as a PlayStation 3 exclusive at the time. The game, of course, never came out, but over years, we've actually seen Rockstar renew the trademark over and over again, which implies that they do want to hold on to the name, and whatever resources and who knows how far along the project actually was, but whatever it was, Rockstar wants to hang on to it. So basically, this Twitter account tweeted some concept imagery from Agent. There's really nothing we can go on. For all we know, this could be fake, but take that for what it is. It's always worth mentioning anything related to Agent, because it would be nice to see this game, or at the very least, cancel the game and give us some background on it. Tell us a little bit about, you know, like what went wrong, or what maybe the, you know, or it might even be something simple, like Rockstar didn't get that far into it and just decided to do something else. Sony also said for the longest time, it was actually Jack Tretton when he was still in position, or I think it was when he left Sony, but either way, at one point even Jack Tretton said, you know, he's not sure if the game's exclusive anymore, because it was promised as a PS3 exclusive at the time. I just want to know, like, where is this game at? And if it's never coming out, just cancel it and show us and tell us about it, please. I want to know. All right, this one I really wanted to talk about, because you'll probably get a spin on it that is different from most other people that are probably talking about this. But anyway, recently, speaking to MCV, it was EA's Vice President of Global Publishing, Laura Meal. She was talking about Battlefield 1's like upcoming competitive mode or whatever the hell. Anyway, what's interesting is sort of her take on EA's recent philosophy changes, and she was talking about more so how EA is focusing on making players happy, and it's not necessarily about revenue anymore. So that's what people are, you know, talking about. Anyway, here's the quote. She said, "I really see it as a golden era of gaming right now, where players are at the center of our business strategies, our game design, and our execution. Internally at EA, we now measure player sentiment and player engagement over dollars or unit sales. We really have taken a really significant shift. We had players at our studio helping us create Battlefield 1's new competitive gaming mode, and that's why I think it's a golden era for players, because they have such a strong voice in what we are creating. Players are at the center of everything that we do. To have players' sentiment, engagement, and to have our team rewarded for that instead of units and revenue has radically changed the way we think about services and games for our players." Now, I don't even have to, like, explain this to you. I'm sure the comments everywhere that this article was posted, or any other YouTuber that's talking about this, is probably shitting on EA, same with the people in the comments or whatever, this, that, and the other, bringing up multiple examples. Oh, what happened to Mass Effect Andromeda? How about when you did a bunch of season passes? Or EA is the most evil company in the world. And look, I'm not going to sit here and defend EA. I'm not going to defend a multi-million-dollar video game corporation. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. EA has obviously made some poor choices in the past. They are a big company, and at the end of the day, they do have to focus on keeping the company sustainable, which means that they do have to focus on profits and revenue. However, I am not going to shit on EA, because that's what everybody does. If you want to see that, you can go anywhere else for that. What I will offer to this interesting piece of news is this sentiment. The games industry isn't necessarily like every other industry. Like, when it comes, like, okay, let's say, I don't know, let's pick a random industry. Let's pick a company that makes pencils. Do you think the CEO of that company cares about pencils? You know what I mean? What I'm sort of getting at is that, you know, hate EA or any other game developer all you want, call developers lazy, or call, you know, so-and-so publisher evil, or, you know, just get overly emotional about this stuff. What I will say is that you can't be in the games industry without actually passionately being into video games. That's all I'm gonna say, right? Because it's like, it's very easy to hate EA, and understandably so. Again, I'm not defending them whatsoever. I can certainly make a bunch of videos hating EA for their business practices. I just thought this would be an interesting news story to offer that little spin to it, because probably nobody's talking about that. At the end of the day, you cannot be in the games industry without enjoying video games, and that goes for people that work at EA. That's something I always like to bring to light. So many people are quick to criticize or hate or just get really mean and vitriol to game developers and people that work at video game companies and stuff. But like, this is the kind of industry where you're not going to be involved in it if you don't have something riding in it for you. And at the end of the day, that's games. That's video games. People genuinely enjoy video games, and that goes for the people that work at EA. So, yeah, they're clearly there for revenue. Yeah, that was a pretty good bullshit PR answer, but I'll take her word for it that probably internally they are focusing a lot more on player engagement and looking at what makes people satisfied in terms of what's going on in their games and stuff. That certainly happens in big companies. So I'll just say games are games with that kind of industry. You can't just be a game developer and have or be a high-ranking executive at EA or Activision or Ubisoft and not know what the hell you're doing in terms of video games. You have to be a gamer. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to say. And you know what I also thought of the other day, which was really weird? It was, what was I thinking of the other day? I was thinking like, oh man, you know what must have sucked? I don't remember how, I was talking to somebody about it. I was like, you know what must have sucked back in the day? If you were like a brand new developer, like you're fresh out of school and you're like, you're looking for your big break and you get hired at, you know, so-and-so developer and it turns out you're actually making Rugrats for the PlayStation 1. I thought to myself like, that must suck, because you don't get into game development to work on a shitty game like that. You probably get into it because you genuinely like to play Splinter Cell, or I'm thinking of like PS1 games at the time, or like, you know, playing the latest Nintendo game or something. Like, you're into that kind of stuff, and then your first big gig when you're finally a game developer is like working on Rugrats or Barbies or Babies, or you know what I mean, like those like just shovelware games. I was thinking of that the other day. I always look at it from that sort of human side. So I thought I'd highlight that today here as well. Those are just some of the news stories that I want to talk about with you guys this week. So in terms of Let's Play, so what I'm doing is I'm probably going to take the next week off where it's like no Let's Play Monday or anything. And so basically next week's Let's Talk PlayStation, I'll get a Twitter poll up. I'll let you guys know, obviously, and you'll get 24 hours to vote on that. And then that following Monday will be episode 1 of The Game That Wins, so that'll be all well and good. That Jack and Daxter 1 streaming idea that I want to do, at this point, I'm for sure, I totally want to do that. It's just a matter of when, and that I have no idea on. So I'll keep you guys posted on that as well, so stay tuned if you're interested in that, which would be awesome. Finally, we'll stream at some point. Actually, what I'm also wondering is, should it be Twitch, or just do you want me to do it straight on YouTube? That's the other thing. Since I've never streamed, where do you want to start seeing that? Some people don't like when somebody that's typically a normal uploader starts live streaming, so some people like to have it go on Twitch. I really don't care at this point, but so I'll actually ask for your feedback on that, and you can let me know where you'd prefer it to be. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.